I gave my family 20 years of my life, one shift at a time. And the day I finally tried to slow down, they looked me in the face and called me lazy. That word hit harder than any 12-hour shift ever had. Lazy. I can still hear it. We were standing in the kitchen, my kitchen, the one I paid for, the one with the hardwood floors my wife picked out years ago when the kids were still small and I was too tired to care what color anything was, as long as the bills got paid. Evening light was coming through the window over the sink. The house smelled like coffee and dish soap, ordinary, calm on the surface. And then my own kid said it. You're cutting your hours because you don't feel like working anymore. That's lazy. For a second, I honestly thought I had heard wrong. I just stared at him. My daughter was at the table, arms folded, jaw tight, backing her brother up with silence. My wife stood by the counter with that look she'd been wearing for weeks now, disappointed, wounded, like I had betrayed some promise I never remembered making. I looked from one face to the next and felt something in me go cold. Not anger at first, just disbelief, because these were the people I had built my entire life around, the people I had missed birthdays for, school plays, weekend barbecues, random Tuesday dinners, snow days, sick days, lazy mornings, ordinary little moments that add up to a life. I had traded all of that for work. And now at 55, when my back ached before I even got out of bed, and my knees complained going upstairs and my hands stayed stiff in the morning, longer than they used to, I had finally made one decision for myself. One, and somehow that made me the villain. I didn't yell right away. I wish I had. Maybe it would have been cleaner. Instead, I stood there with my hand still wrapped around the coffee mug gone lukewarm, and I could feel every year of my life pressing down on my shoulders. You think I'm lazy, I said. My son shrugged, not even ashamed. You had a system that worked. Now you're changing it when everyone still needs help. Everyone. That word almost made me laugh. Everyone, as if they were talking about helpless children, as if these weren't two grown adults with university degrees, jobs, and no rent to pay, as if their struggle was hunger or fear or survival, and not the fact that they wanted nicer cars and bigger apartments than they could comfortably afford on their own. I looked at my wife. Is that what you think too? She didn't answer immediately. She hated direct questions when the answer made her look bad. I think, she said carefully, that this family was used to a certain level of support. There it was, support, a soft word for dependence, a polite word for expectation, a dangerous word when people start believing they're entitled to your exhaustion. I set the mug down, slowly, because I knew if I moved too fast, I was going to say something I couldn't take back. But maybe I should have said it years earlier. For most of my adult life, my world had been measured in rotations. 6 weeks out of town, 12-hour days, then 3 weeks home, over and over and over again. Not for a season, not for a temporary push, for 20 years. 20. I started that grind at 35. Back then I could handle it. I was strong. I could sleep anywhere, eat anything, wake up in the dark and keep moving. The money was good, especially with overtime, and there was always overtime. 44 extra hours a week. Huge money. Life-changing money if you were willing to bleed for it. I was willing, because I had a wife at home with 2 kids, because I wanted them secure, because I knew what it felt like to grow up with parents counting pennies and pretending not to worry. I didn't want that for my family, so I worked. I worked through rain and heat, and frozen mornings and nights so long they blurred into the next day. I worked while my kids learned to ride bikes. I worked while they lost baby teeth. I worked while they grew taller and louder and more expensive. I worked while my wife stayed home and kept the house running, and I told myself it was worth it. Every mortgage payment, every college fund deposit, every retirement contribution, every emergency fund top-up, every vehicle we bought in cash, every tax refund turned into a family vacation. Every time I came home with my body wrecked and my eyes burning and still smiled because I could see where the money was going, I told myself, this is what a man does. This is what a father does. Keep going, and I did. When the kids needed tuition, it was there. When the cars needed replacing, we paid cash. When the mortgage came due, we killed it. When retirement needed padding, we padded it. I had a system, a disciplined one. Every dollar had a job. After-tax pay to the house and bills. Then the kids' education. Then retirement. Then more retirement. Then emergency savings. Then whatever was left, split down the middle between me and my wife. 1,000 a month each, by the end, to spend however we wanted. Mine I mostly saved. Hers, I later found out, had quietly become a second allowance for our grown children. I didn't know how much that mattered until I tried to stop feeding it. The office job came up at just the right time. I still remember seeing the posting. Bright screen in a dim break room, my lunch sitting untouched beside me, my lower back throbbing from a long morning. City job, 9 to 5, 40 hours a week, better hourly rate, better benefits in some ways. Less money overall because the overtime would disappear, but still solid, stable, human. I stared at that posting for a long time. My first thought was simple. I can do this. My second thought came right after. I need this, not want, need. Because I was tired in a way sleep no longer fixed. Tired down in the bones, tired in the joints, tired in the part of me that had spent 2 decades bracing against weather, deadlines, and distance. Tired of hotel rooms, tired of out-of-town meals, tired of missing my own life while paying for everyone else's. By then, both kids were through university. Degrees earned, jobs lined up, adults at least on paper, mortgage gone, cars under warranty, retirement healthy, savings solid, no education fund to feed anymore, no crisis, no emergency, no reason I had to keep grinding myself into dust, except habit and other people's appetite for what my labor could buy. So I applied. When I got it, I sat in my truck in the parking lot and just breathed. I should have felt guilty, maybe. Instead, I felt relief so sharp it almost hurt. I called my wife first. They offered me the office position, I said. There was a pause. The city one? Yeah. And you're taking it? I looked out through the windshield at the gray sky and the industrial yard and the men walking in heavy boots from one job to the next. Men pretending they weren't wearing out. Yes, I said. I'm taking it. Another pause. That's a big pay cut. It's still good money, but less. Yeah, I said. Less. What I wanted her to say was you've earned it. What I wanted was I'm proud of you. What I wanted was some sign that she saw the years, the way I saw them. Instead, she said, we should talk about the budget. Even then, I ignored the warning in that. I came home that week lighter than I had felt in years. I thought maybe, once we all sat down and looked at the numbers, everyone would understand. We weren't hurting, not even close. We had more than enough. Not luxury on demand money maybe, but comfort, stability, breathing room. I laid it all out at the table. No mortgage, I said. No tuition. Cars are paid off. Savings are good. Retirement is good. We still have room every month. We're fine. My wife sat across from me, lips pressed together. The kids listened from the side, both of them with that half-defensive, half-impatient expression young adults get when they know money is being discussed and suspect the answer is about to become no. My daughter spoke first. What about us? I looked at her. What about you? She gave me an incredulous look. Dad, come on. No, I said. Say it. She shifted in her seat. We're trying to get started. My son jumped in. Rent is insane. Cars are expensive. Everything is expensive. You both have jobs. Entry-level jobs, he snapped. I leaned back in my chair and studied them. They weren't wrong that things were expensive. They weren't wrong that starting out was hard. I knew it was hard. But there was hard, and then there was what they meant by hard. What they meant was we can't have exactly what we want immediately. My wife finally spoke. They need help getting established. I nodded slowly. They already have help. They live here. Rent-free, food in the fridge, utilities covered. That's not the same as independence. I looked at her. Then they can save and move out. My daughter's voice sharpened. Save for what? A shoebox apartment in a bad area? And some used junk car that dies in 6 months? There it was. The real issue. Not survival. Standards. Expectations built on a life funded by my overtime. They can afford apartments, I said. They can afford cars. Just not luxury cars and huge apartments. Silence. Ugly silence. Then my son laughed once, short and bitter. So because you're tired, we're supposed to lower our whole future? That did it. Because you're tired. As if tired was weakness. As if tired was some flimsy excuse I had invented to avoid doing my duty. As if my body wasn't carrying 20 years of proof. I felt heat rise into my face. You think this is about me being tired? He didn't answer, but his expression did. And in that moment, something shifted in me. Not all at once, more like a crack running through old concrete. Quiet, permanent. I started seeing things differently after that. I noticed how often my wife said yes to them before they even asked me. I noticed how casually they spoke about my money, not our finances, my labor, my time converted into dollars and treated like a household utility, like electricity. Of course it's there. Of course it should keep flowing. Of course someone else can pay the bill. I noticed how my wife had been using her monthly spending money. At first it came out in pieces, a transfer here, a little help there, covering insurance, sending money for gas, chipping in for this, for that. I asked one evening, trying to keep my voice neutral, "How much have you been giving them?" She bristled immediately. "Why does it matter?" "Because I'm asking. There are children. How much?" She sighed dramatically, like I was the one being difficult. "Some months more than others. How much?" She named the number. I just stared at her. It wasn't ruinous. That wasn't the point. The point was that she had created a quiet pipeline from our budget to their wants. And now that my income was dropping, she expected me to compensate for the shortfall so the pipeline could keep running. I laughed then, not because it was funny, because I finally understood. This wasn't panic. This was entitlement meeting a boundary. "You've been giving them your spending money," I said. "It's my money to use." "It is. Then what's the problem?" "The problem is you want me to give them mine too." She folded her arms. "I want you to care that they're struggling." I looked at her for a long time. "You think wanting a nicer car is struggling?" "You're twisting it." "No," I said quietly. "I think we've spent years making them too comfortable." Her face changed at that, hardened. "You were gone most of the time," she said. That one landed, because it was true, and because it was unfair. I had been gone most of the time, gone to work, gone to earn, gone so she could be home, gone so the kids could have options, gone so this family could have the exact comfort she was now using as evidence against me. I stood there in the kitchen, hands on the back of a chair, and felt that old guilt stir. The fear that providing isn't the same as being present. The fear that maybe all those years of sacrifice bought security, but cost something else you can't get back. She saw it in my face and pushed. "They're used to a certain life," she said. "You can't just pull back now." I straightened up. "Watch me." That was the beginning of the war. It wasn't screaming every day. It was worse. It was pressure. Constant, low-grade pressure. Comments over dinner. Sighs when bills came up. Little speeches about the kids' future. Questions designed to make me justify myself over and over again. Would it really kill you to help with a down payment? Why are you so fixated on this shop? Do you really need to cut back this much? Most fathers would want to help their kids get ahead. Most fathers. I hated that phrase, as if fatherhood were a contest measured by how long you let yourself be used. The shop became a symbol somehow. My garage plan. My one thing. My wife knew I had been setting money aside for it, little by little, because I wanted a space of my own. Tools organized, projects half finished and waiting for me, a place to breathe, a place to be something other than a machine that produced income. To me it was peace. To them it became selfishness. One Saturday morning I was in the garage measuring wall space, just imagining where the benches would go, when my daughter came out. "You're really serious about this?" she asked. I didn't look up. "About what?" "Building yourself a workshop while we're all trying to figure our lives out." I set the tape measure down and turned to face her. She looked so certain, so righteous, young enough to believe need and want were basically the same thing if the want felt strong enough. "You are figuring your life out," I said, "with a free place to live." She rolled her eyes. "You always say that like it's some huge favor." I felt my jaw tighten. "It is a huge favor. You're our dad." "Yes," I said, "I am." She crossed her arms. "Then act like it." For a second I couldn't even speak. Because what did she think I had been doing all these years? Playing? Vacationing? Hiding from responsibility? I thought of winter mornings leaving before dawn. Thought of cheap motel coffee. Thought of steel-toed boots by the door. Thought of missing Christmas concerts because a shutdown ran long. Thought of standing in freezing wind with my phone in my hand, listening to a child on the other end tell me about a school award I wasn't there to see in person. Act like it. I took a breath so deep it hurt. You have any idea, I said very quietly, what your life cost me? She flinched at the tone, but she held her ground. We didn't ask you to do all that. That one was brutal. Not because it was entirely wrong, because children don't ask. Parents choose. I chose, and I would choose to provide for them again if they were hungry, sick, in danger. Broken by life. Truly in need. I knew that. There was never really a question. But that wasn't what this was. This was comfort becoming expectation. This was sacrifice being forgotten because it had always arrived on time. I turned away from her before I said something unforgivable. Then don't ask me for more. She left in tears. My wife came at me an hour later. What did you say to her? The truth. She was crying. Good, maybe she'll hear it better. My wife stared at me like I was a stranger. You've become so cold. I laughed once. No, I've become clear. She shook her head. You think because you worked hard, nobody else gets to have feelings. I stepped closer. No, I think because I worked hard, I get to stop before I die doing it. That shut her up for a moment, but not for long. The next real explosion came at dinner. All four of us at the table, plates half finished, tension already in the room before anyone spoke. My son had been apartment hunting online all week, and every place he liked was too expensive unless someone else made up the difference. He pushed his phone across the table toward me. Look at this one. I didn't touch it. What about it? It's close to work. Good neighborhood. Parking included. How much? He told me. I almost smiled. No. He leaned back. You didn't even think about it. I did. No. Why? Because you can't afford it. I can if you help. I picked up my fork again. Then you can't afford it. His face went red. You have the money. And I'm your son. I put the fork down. There was a long, heavy silence. Then I said, that is not a business plan. My daughter let out an irritated breath. This is unbelievable. My wife jumped in. He's not asking for forever. Just help getting started. I looked at her. He is started. He has a degree. He has a job. He has a roof over his head. He needs a chance. He has one. My son's voice sharpened. You had help. I stared at him. No, I didn't. He blinked. What? I did not have help. I had work. He scoffed. That's not the same world. No, I said, it isn't. In my world, if you wanted something, you worked until your hands hurt and then you worked more. That's such a boomer thing to say. I almost laughed again. And yet it built this house. My wife slammed her hand lightly on the table. Can we stop making this about pride? It's not pride. Then what is it? I looked at all three of them. And finally, I said the thing I had been swallowing for weeks. It's about the fact that I am done being treated like an ATM with a pulse. The room went dead still. My daughter looked stunned. My son looked furious. My wife looked wounded. But beneath that I saw something else. Recognition. Because she knew. She knew exactly how much of this family's comfort had been built on my absence and my exhaustion. She knew what it had cost. She just didn't want the system to change because the system had been convenient. You're being dramatic, she said. No, I said. I'm being honest. My son pushed his chair back. This is unbelievable. You cut your hours and suddenly everyone else has to suffer. That word, suffer. I looked around the dining room, at the full plates, the warm lights, the paid-for furniture, the house with no mortgage, the adults sitting in it rent-free. Suffer. And then he said it, the word that snapped whatever was left. This is just lazy. I stood up so fast my chair scraped hard against the floor. Nobody moved. I could hear my own heartbeat. Say that again. My son lifted his chin, trying to look brave. You heard me. I took one step toward him, not threatening, just enough to make it clear I was no longer sitting there and absorbing this. Lazy, I said. You think 6 weeks away from home at a time for 20 years was lazy. 12-hour days was lazy. Missing half your childhood to pay for the other half was lazy? He didn't answer. I turned to my daughter. Do you think that too? She looked down. I turned to my wife. Do you? That silence told me everything. And that was the moment I stopped trying to be understood. I straightened up and said, very calm, very clear, if you think the kids need more money, get a job. My wife's head jerked back. What? You heard me. You can't be serious. I'm completely serious. You're 46. You're healthy. The kids are grown. If you want to give them extra money, go earn it. Her face went white, then red. After everything I did raising this family, I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Yes, after everything I did paying for it. The room exploded. My wife stood up so quickly her chair nearly tipped. How dare you? How dare I what? Suggest that an able-bodied adult work? You think staying home was nothing? I didn't say that. You're acting like I've done nothing. I'm acting like if you believe they need more than I'm already providing, you are free to fund it. My daughter jumped in. That's so disrespectful. I looked at her. What's disrespectful? Is calling me lazy after I carried this family for 2 decades. My son muttered, "Here we go again." I rounded on him. Damn right, here we go again, because none of you seem to remember where any of this came from. Nobody spoke. The air in the room felt electric. My wife's voice shook when she finally said, "You're punishing us because you're resentful." That one cut close enough to truth to sting. Was I resentful? Maybe. Maybe resentment is what happens when gratitude disappears and obligation remains. Maybe it's what grows in the space where appreciation should have been. But I wasn't punishing anyone. I was stopping. There's a difference. I'm not punishing you, I said. I'm refusing to keep overworking so grown adults can have nicer toys. My son scoffed and grabbed his plate. My daughter stood too, eyes bright with angry tears. My wife just stood there breathing hard, staring at me like she no longer knew who I was. Maybe she didn't. Maybe I didn't either. The next few days were ice. Short answers, closed doors, dishes done with more noise than necessary. My wife barely spoke to me unless it was logistical. The kids moved around me like I was some hostile force occupying the house instead of the man keeping it running. At work, in my new office, things were strangely peaceful. That was the cruel part. I liked it. I liked the normal hours. Liked driving home at a reasonable time. Liked sleeping in my own bed every night. Liked not waking up in some rented room with a television bolted to the dresser and stale air in the curtains. Liked having enough energy left at the end of the day to think. And once I had space to think, I started seeing the whole thing more clearly. I had built a family economy around my overwork. That overwork had become normal. Normal becomes invisible. Invisible effort gets mistaken for effortless supply. And once people believe the supply is natural, they stop seeing the cost. That was the twist in all of it. They didn't think they were exploiting me. They thought this was just how life worked. Dad earns, mom distributes, kids receive. The machine hums forever. My stopping felt to them like betrayal because they had confused sacrifice with baseline. One night, a week after the dinner blow-up, my wife came into the bedroom while I was folding laundry. Not my laundry, ours. Because despite everything, life keeps moving in stupid ordinary ways. She stood in the doorway for a moment before speaking. "We need to talk." I kept folding. "Okay." "The kids feel unwelcome." I nodded once. "Interesting." She frowned. "Don't do that." "Do what?" "That sarcastic thing." I set the shirt down and looked at her. "What do you want to talk about?" She took a breath. "You've changed." "Yes." "You used to care more." "No," I said. "I used to say yes more." Her eyes narrowed. "That's not fair." "I didn't call you lazy. You didn't stop it either." She looked away. For a moment, I thought she might apologize. She didn't. Instead, she said, "They're young, they don't understand." I stared at her. "Then help them understand." "I'm trying to keep the peace." "No," I said. "You're trying to keep the money flowing." She flinched. Silence stretched between us. Then she said quietly, "Do you know what it was like, you being gone all the time?" I leaned back against the dresser. Here it was. The old wound. The one under all the money arguments. "No," I said. "Not from your side." Her voice trembled. I was alone a lot. I let that sit, because I knew it was true. I had been the one working out of town, but she had been the one home, carrying the day-to-day. Sick kids, school forms, broken appliances, loneliness in the evenings. Decisions made without a partner physically there. I knew that. I had always known it, even if we didn't say it enough. "I know," I said. She blinked, surprised maybe that I wasn't fighting. "I gave up a lot too," she whispered. "I know." "So when you say, get a job, like I've just been sitting around." I didn't say that. I cut in. I said if you want to give them more money, earn it. She shook her head. "You don't hear how cruel that sounds." I looked at her for a long time. Then I said the thing neither of us had wanted to say out loud. "What's cruel is asking me to keep grinding my body down so nobody has to adjust." That landed. She sat on the edge of the bed. For the first time in weeks, she looked tired instead of angry. I just wanted them to have an easier start than we did, she said. I nodded. So did I. And now I think we gave them so much ease they mistake comfort for necessity. She didn't argue. That was new. I sat beside her, not touching, just close enough to feel the years between us. We did our job, I said. They're educated, employed, safe, fed, housed. That is not failure. She stared at the floor. They think you don't care. I let out a slow breath. Maybe that's because caring has always looked like money in this house. She looked up at me then, and there it was, the truth neither of us had named. For years, my love had arrived as direct deposit. No wonder they didn't know what else to call it. But understanding something doesn't erase it. The next morning, I found my son in the kitchen before work, alone, coffee in hand, tie half done. He looked older in that light, not like a kid, just like a young man who had been saying stupid things because he was scared. I poured myself coffee and stood across from him. He cleared his throat. Mom said you guys talked. Yeah, he nodded. Silence. Then without looking at me, he muttered, I shouldn't have called you lazy. I waited. He glanced up. I know you worked hard. It wasn't graceful. It wasn't some big emotional breakthrough, but it was something. I nodded once. Don't say it again. I won't. I took a sip of coffee. You can stay here while you save, but I'm not funding a lifestyle you haven't earned. His jaw tightened, but he didn't argue. Okay, he said. Later that week, my daughter came to me too. More emotional, more defensive, more honest. I just thought, she said, standing in the doorway of the garage while I sorted tools. I thought you wanted us to have better. I looked at her. I do want you to have better. Then why does it feel like you're making it harder? I set the wrench down. Because better and easier are not the same thing. She swallowed. I could see tears building already. I'm not trying to be ungrateful, she said. I got used to knowing there was a cushion. That one at least was honest. I nodded. I know. She wiped at her eyes. It's scary. And there it was, the part beneath the entitlement. Fear. Fear of falling. Fear of not measuring up. Fear of stepping into adult life without the same soft landing they'd always had. I softened then. Not on the boundary, on the ceiling. Yeah, I said. She looked at me like she hadn't expected agreement. I'm not throwing you out, I said. I'm not letting you starve. But I'm not going to keep killing myself so you can skip the uncomfortable part of growing up. She nodded slowly, not happy, but hearing me. That left my wife. She didn't apologize right away. Maybe she never fully would. Some marriages survive on partial admissions and quiet recalculations more than dramatic confessions. But things shifted. A few weeks later, she mentioned, casually at first, that she had been looking at part-time positions. I looked up from the paper. Oh, she shrugged. Just to get out of the house more. I almost smiled. We both knew that wasn't the whole reason. But I let her have the dignity of saying it that way. Could be good, I said. She nodded. There was a long pause, then she said, I still think you could have said it better. I folded the paper. I still think I shouldn't have had to say it at all. She gave me a look, half annoyed, half conceding the point. That was as close to peace as we got. And maybe peace isn't always warmth. Maybe sometimes it's just honesty finally aired out enough that everyone can breathe. The house changed after that, not overnight, but gradually. The kids started talking more realistically about budgets, about used cars, smaller places, roommates, saving, waiting, ordinary adult words, unsexy words, necessary words. My wife stopped hinting that I should hand over my monthly money. I kept putting money aside for the shop, and every morning I went to my office job. 40 hours, home at night, dinner at my own table, my own bed, my own life, finally returning to me in pieces. Sometimes I still think about that word, lazy. It doesn't sting the same way now. Now it sounds like what it really was. A child's insult thrown at the moment the machine stopped dispensing. But there's one part that stays with me. Not the fight, not even the apology. The realization. I spent so many years believing sacrifice would naturally be understood if I just kept doing it long enough. It isn't. If you build a life where your love always looks like provision, People may never learn the difference between being cared for and being carried. And when you finally put the weight down, they may call that abandonment. So here I am, 55, tired, yes, but not broken. Not yet, still paying for the house everyone lives in, still buying the groceries, still keeping the lights on, still doing my part. Just not all of theirs too. And if that makes me cruel in their eyes, maybe I can live with that. 'Cause I know what the alternative costs. I've already paid it. The real question is this. After giving your family everything they needed for years, how much of yourself are you still obligated to give when what they want is more than enough?